any other world leaders since Kabul fell to the Taliban?
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong person. He has not yet spoken with any other world leaders. Myself, Secretary Blinken, several other senior members of the team have been engaged on a regular basis with foreign counterparts, and we intend to do so in the coming days.
As always, we are covering every angle. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin spent 36 years in the Army, founder of the original Delta Force, and a member who's going to talk about the on-the-ground situation. Peter Schweizer has dedicated his life and research to analyzing the geopolitical matrix and the U.S. involvement in dealings with some of the most dangerous nations in the world. We start with Congressman Scott Franklin, retired U.S. Army intelligence officer. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time. We're going to be smarter at the end of this. First to you, Representative Franklin. This headline caught our attention here out of the China Daily News. U.S. humiliation in Afghanistan in warning to Taiwan. I can imagine that a lot of your former colleagues in military intelligence are rewriting their briefs on what might happen with China.
Well, there's no doubt that the world's a more dangerous place today, not just because of what's happened inside of Afghanistan, but what the response that we're going to see from our other potential adversaries, the Chinese, Communist Chinese Party in particular, the Russians, the North Koreans, the Iranians, they're all watching and observing how we're responding, and they're going to act accordingly.
Peter, it seems like you could really say the Soviet defeat in Afghanistan was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Empire. Is the American defeat in Afghanistan the beginning of the Chinese Empire?
Well, certainly the Chinese are going to be opportunistic, and they're going to look for ways to press the United States. I think a good way to look at this is what happened to John Kennedy after the Bay of Pigs fiasco, where you had that intelligence operation totally collapse. Out of that, the Soviets immediately started working on the Berlin Wall. We got the Cuban Missile Crisis. The point is that the Chinese, who have made it very clear that their objective is to supplant the United States as the sort of convening superpower in the world, see this as an opportunity, and they are going to press that opportunity. And the problem is for the Biden administration, Joe Biden really campaigned on the fact that his strength was, first, the adults are back in charge. That's the way he presented it. You know, he was the competent guy who knows foreign policy better than anyone else. And second of all, that he was going to rebuild, in his word, our alliances with our, allies around the world. Both of those are completely collapsed because this single fiasco, this crisis has demonstrated that this administration is simply not ready to deal with what is a tragic situation, but should not have been an overwhelming one.
Well, and right now we've got 6,000 American troops back in harm's way. General Boykin, that brings us to what's happening on the ground. There is 11,000 or so Americans in Kabul right now and in Afghanistan in general. You've got the embassy staff. You've got 6,000 U.S. troops there at the airport. And I guess the question is, I'm seeing that we seem to have an issue with the signal from somebody. Is the general still with us? There he is. I guess the question would be, it seems as though all of these Americans at the airport and around Afghanistan are essentially trusting the goodwill of the Taliban for security.
Yeah, that's kind of ironic, isn't it? I find this a humiliating situation, but we know by now we cannot trust the Taliban. They are not trustworthy in any sense, particularly in a situation like this. Now, thus far, they haven't been bold enough to attack the ongoing activities on the airfield there, but we cannot trust them. And we've got to recognize that this is a high-risk operation, no matter what option we use to try and bring in at least 10,000 Americans and maybe 30,000 people overall. It's a high-risk operation, and every day that goes by, it gets a higher risk.
This is how Admiral Kirby at the Pentagon, who's been taking an awful lot of incoming fire from the Pentagon press corps, described things. Take a listen.
Is the administration confident that all Americans are essentially free of Taliban control? Do you have anything that indicates the Taliban are going after any of these Americans?
Well, there's a lot there, Barb. I can only tell you what we know, and that there hasn't been any hostile interactions by the Taliban to our people or to our operations. Part of our operations include helping evacuate American citizens.
As you well know, sir, I don't need to describe this, but for our audience, I will, that Delta Force came to be just around the time of the Iranian hostage crisis. Are we at a situation where we're in danger of another Iranian hostage crisis, but this time it'll be a Taliban hostage crisis?
I don't think there's any question about that. With these people that are we're trying to get into the airfield to evacuate are scattered all over the country. And first of all, if they try to move by road, they are subject to being ambushed and taken hostage. So I think the potential for a hostage situation is enormous here. And, you've got a lot of these people that are trapped out there in the interior are missionaries, they're contractors, they're all kinds of things and many of them are actually Afghanis that have received American citizenship. They are perfect targets for a kidnapping.
Yeah, and then the bell goes off again. Congressman Franklin, this is the latest public opinion polls, and you've spoken about this issue for a long time. All voters in August, 49% support when only 69% had supported withdrawal. It breaks down, as you might imagine, a little differently by party. But what would have to happen for you to support going back in a combat way to Afghanistan?
Well, we have a commitment to the people there on the ground who've helped us. Not only do we have to get the Americans out, but those who have stood by our sides and fought with us, the interpreter, cut and run on them. And, God help us in our foreign diplomacy in decades to come if we strand those people now and we don't honor our commitments, because we're going to have a hard time finding friends and allies in the future if we do.
Yeah, Peter, one thing that the Chinese have been very good at is filling a vacuum when the U.S. pulls out. They're beginning to do that now in Afghanistan. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge move on their part. Afghanistan obviously is a country that is ridden with tribal conflict and warfare, but it's rich in a lot of minerals, a lot of rare earth minerals. It's also located geostrategically at sort of a center point as far as China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is their effort to sort of project power by creating a grid of roads and ports and ways in which they can move goods and potentially troops across the Asian continent. So they're going to move into this void. And, let's be clear, the kind of debates and discussions we have in the United States about the human rights that takes place in Beijing, they are happy to work with whoever will advance Chinese interests, will be antithetical to the United States, and who will advance the sort of strategy of China. So I expect them to move into Afghanistan, and I expect other countries in the region like India, who, of course, are also trying to counter China, to be very nervous and concerned about the lack of commitment by this administration. I mean, I have to say, I've never quite seen a situation where a crisis like this evolves and the commander-in-chief just stays on vacation, doesn't talk to foreign leaders. It's really quite astounding.
You can imagine, given the Chinese talking, and this wasn't just people in China, this is the Global Times, the Beijing mouthpiece, if you will, issuing a warning to Taiwan in an editorial saying, hey, Taiwan, America is going to abandon you as well. Peter, you study these issues. Is that a warning the Taiwanese have no choice but to take? But then again, they don't really have any options other than the United States.
Oh, absolutely. And you can already see that other regional powers that are allies of the United States that have been, committed to Taiwan are kind of hedging their bets. And if I were in Taipei right now, I would be very concerned, really on two levels. Number one, there's the issue of commitment. Is this administration committed and willing to express their commitments in a way that makes clear to China that you cannot cross that red line? But the second one, frankly, is one of competence, not the competence of the boots, but of the suits, the strategists that are going to be making the call. I mean, if they have a difficult time executing and handling what was a withdrawal that was initially discussed in 2018. I mean, this is not like an earthquake that suddenly happened that we're trying to scramble and deal with. They had 3 years to deal with it, and they boggled it. So if I were in Taipei, I'd be concerned about the fortitude of this administration, but also also basically the competence of this administration and their ability to handle and conduct operations that might need to be handled in the Pacific theater.
General and Congressman, I want to sort of give this both to you. So listen to the question. We'll go to each of you for about 30 seconds. Picking up where Peter left off, it doesn't seem as though the Biden administration is giving the Taliban much reason to protect Americans, or for that matter, to not attack Americans for political gain. General, how do you protect against that if you're commanding the troops right now at Kabul Air Base?
Well, first of all, we've given them a significant victory is what we've given them, and we've also destroyed our credibility with our allies, as the Congressman said. Look, I don't know what he can offer them at this point that they don't already have. What they want is they want Afghanistan, and for the most part, they have it. So I don't know anything that you could offer them right now from the Biden administration that would change their thinking in any way.
Congressman, does this end with the Taliban wanting Afghanistan? Are they going to be happy there, or do they export terror and radical Islam around the world?
Well, I think all we can do is look at the example of history, and all would indicate that they will. That they want to export terrorism. They want to do anything that will destroy what we believe in and cherish here in the West. And if that means supporting terrorists to get that done, to accomplish those means, they'll do it.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the other ways that they fund that terrorist activity a little later. Gentlemen, we appreciate your expertise. Next time, we're going to have a little bit longer for the conversation, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.